listen to reason. Will you open your eyes?
William in North Carolina, how are you?
Hey, how's it going?
Great, thanks for waiting.
No problem. I called yesterday and I don't know if I got cut off or y'all hung up before y'all made I could hear the counterpoint, but it was about child preach.
Well, we weren't here yesterday, so.
Well, whoever, I know, I'm sorry, Russell and a first timer, I couldn't catch his name.
His means last week.
I think you mean last week?
That's fine, yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So what was the question?
About child preachers, like how abusive is it? Do y'all feel it is?
I watched a special the other day called Pint-Sized Preachers, I think, on, I don't know if it was on History or whatever, that chronicled a couple of young kids who are, well, one of them is almost a teenager and is actually like an active minister, and the other one's like 4 or 5 who's clearly just mimicking his parents and babbling incoherently, and yet.
Wow.
And yet, the congregation's, putting him up there in front of everybody and going right along with it and encouraging this. And I think it tells us a lot about, the theater aspect of religion. And I found it interesting that people were nodding and agreeing with sentences that made no sense, that weren't actually sentences. It was word, the name of the place we're in, like Hello Cleveland type thing, and then Jesus, and then yay, can't you feel the Spirit moving through him? I don't know how harmful it is on the kids. I don't get the impression that his parents are forcing him to do this. I don't think in his case it's like another Marjo, which, by the way, if you haven't seen the documentary Marjo,
I have.
Yeah, I highly recommend it. So yeah, I really couldn't say. I'm a fan of eliminating religious indoctrination for kids, but I'm not a fan of legislating that.
I think I would just like to add that anytime you use children for something, not just this, but there's a lot of different roles that you can put a child into like that, where you're throwing them up in front of people for validation. And to me, my concern with that is the high potential for, I guess, exploitation. And I think that would be what would concern me is exploiting the child and also confusing them a little bit with the validation for particular things, because a child, especially small children, are looking for approval. They want their parents to approve of them, and they're at an age where approval is extremely important. And so when you start approving of things or giving them massive approval for particular behaviors, you have to think about what that means, because this is not an adult that's processing this approval.
Right. Well, you said something about legislating, and I don't even know if it'd be so much legislating as in somewhat to a degree enforcing rules, because there's no way that you can convince me that they're getting a proper education. I mean, it just seems so ignorant.
I don't think that we can say that simply because they're being educated about religious issues, that they're not also being educated properly about other issues. In some cases, that's true. In some cases, if they're being schooled that the Earth is 6,000 years old, yes, they may hear it in their public school, if they're allowed to go to public schools, that the Earth is much older, and those two things are in conflict. I think, by and large, I'm optimistic that the truth will win out, but at least they have received that education. The fact that they're getting an education that undermines that as well is a separate issue, and it's about freedom.
Well, and that has nothing to do with the child preachers. That could apply to any child.
Yes.
Well, yeah, but a lot of them are homeschooled, so if they don't get public school, then how can they get exposed to proper science and maybe probably other subjects?
Well, homeschooling doesn't automatically mean you don't get a good education. As a matter of fact, there are some studies showing that some homeschoolers actually outperform public school kids.
Yeah, and homeschooling is not only the venue of religious people, too. I mean, I would point out that there are people at homeschool that are not religious.
Right, and I don't have an issue with those, but I guess what's well, now it sounds we're getting kind of onto different subjects already. So yeah, I guess I got nothing more to add on that. And
All right. Well, thanks for calling.
Yeah, I think everybody's in favor of education, and I definitely think that there are some states where homeschooling, it probably wouldn't hurt for them to have a little bit more, I guess, oversight
Yeah.
over what's being taught, and a curriculum that needs to be, at least a baseline requirement.